actually be signs of high intelligence. Yeah, turns out that being normal isn't always the gold standard for being smart. In fact, many brilliant people throughout history were also a little quirky. Psychology backs this up too. Certain habits that seem odd on the surface actually point to a sharp, curious, and creative mind. Let's dive into a few of those weird but wise behaviors. Maybe you'll see yourself in them. 1. You talk to yourself. A lot. Ever find yourself arguing with no one, narrating your thoughts, or giving yourself a pep talk in the mirror? Psychologists call this self-directed speech, and it's actually a sign of sharp thinking. Studies show that talking to yourself helps you process ideas faster, solve problems more effectively, and regulate emotions. Kids do it naturally as they learn, and many smart adults never stop. So next time you catch yourself rehearsing conversations or mumbling your to-do list out loud, don't worry, you're not crazy. It's just a weird habit of highly intelligent people. 2. You feel like an outsider. Do you often feel like you don't quite fit in? Many highly intelligent people feel like outsiders, especially early in life. With heightened self-awareness and sharp observation skills, you may see patterns others miss, or question things most people accept without thought. It's a bit like the philosophical allegory of Plato's Cave. In it, prisoners are chained inside and out, only able to see shadows cast on the wall by objects behind them. To them, the shadows are reality. One prisoner escapes, sees the real world outside, and realizes the truth, that the world is so much more than those shadows. But when he returns to tell the others, they reject him. This illustrates how most people often resist new truths that challenge their familiar worldview. Being highly intelligent can be isolating, yes, but it also gives you rare insight, deep empathy, and a way of seeing the world that's anything but ordinary. 3. You get deeply obsessed with random topics. Maybe you spent 3 weeks learning about black holes, or you suddenly had to master chess, dive into 18th century history, or explore every theory about the moon landing. Sound familiar? This kind of deep dive behavior is linked to something called intense curiosity. Psychologists connect it to a trait called openness to experience, which is often found in highly intelligent people. You don't just enjoy learning, you discover into it. These hyper-fixations aren't distractions. They're how your mind engages with the world, one rabbit hole at a time. 4. You have sudden bursts of ideas and insights. Do your best ideas strike at midnight? Do you ever wake up with sudden bursts of insight or feel most productive when the world is asleep? If so, welcome to the strange world of unconscious problem solving. Unlike most people, highly intelligent brains don't shut off at night. They often continue to process, synthesize, and analyze in the background. In fact, research shows our brains are often more creative during rest or distraction than during a focused effort. So don't ignore those flashes of genius in the shower, on a walk, or at 3 a.m. It's your subconscious doing its best work. Alright, number 5. You have long, deep, silent phases. Do you ever disappear into your own head, go quiet, pull back from people, or vanish from social media for a while? While most people avoid being alone, highly intelligent individuals often crave it. Why? Because solitude offers uninterrupted space to think, reflect, and recharge. These quiet phases are common among introspective, high-functioning minds. They're a sign of intrapersonal intelligence, the ability to understand yourself deeply and give your brain space to quietly connect the dots. Even when you seem still on the outside, your mind is often working in the background, solving problems, sparking creativity, and making meaning. And number 6, you ask deep, sometimes weird questions. Why do we dream? What's beyond the edge of the universe? Could time be an illusion? If you've ever been told you think too much or ask too many questions, take it as a compliment. Curiosity is one of the strongest signs of high intelligence.
Battle starts in
Albert
5,
Einstein once said,
4,
"I have
3,
no special talent.
2,
I am only
1.
passionately curious."
I need to
Studies
get
show
back to the
that
mission
curious
area.
people learn
Got it?
faster, enjoy learning
Which
more,
means it's probably
and
not
perform
right.
better, both in school and at work.
You're about to find
Asking
out.
questions, even weird or unanswerable ones, is how we grow, discover,
Look at this
and
jerk.
innovate. It shows that your
Show their
mind
stupid
isn't
faces.
content with surface level answers. You want to understand. If you've ever felt too much, too weird, you're not alone. While these habits aren't guaranteed signs of genius, they often show up in people who demonstrate high intellectual potential. So next time you notice them, don't dismiss them. These so-called quirks might just be signs of a mind that's alive, curious, and constantly searching for meaning. So, which of these habits do you see in yourself? And are there more ways we might have missed? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if this resonates with you, like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content like 6 signs you're so
fate isn't
intelligent it
sealed yet.
intimidates others, and 8 struggles of being a highly intelligent person. Thanks for watching.
Got enough mission areas already.
Uh-huh. Sure you do.
This video is sponsored by MyHeritage. More about them at the end of the episode. Because you have 2 parents, and each of those parents has 2 parents, and so on, your ancestors, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and on, should add up pretty fast. In fact, by the time you get just 37 generations back, you would have 137 billion ancestors just in that 37th generation alone. That's more than the 117 billion or so people that have ever lived on Earth, which is impossible. So you must have a lot fewer ancestors than you think. Hi, I'm Cameron, and this is Minute Maid. To make sense of this, let's say, for example, that, I don't know, your parents are first cousins. I know, bear with me for a second. That would mean that 2 of your grandparents are siblings. And since siblings have the same parents, and therefore the same ancestry, a bunch of these ancestors are duplicates. We can really just count them once. Going back to our 37 generations, that's more than 34 billion ancestors we would no longer be counting. That might sound like an extreme example, but more distant relationships, like fourth cousins, which we don't even consider to be that closely related, still follow out this year. And our family histories are full of lots and lots of inbreeding. That might sound pretty gross to you and me, but mating with relatives hasn't always been frowned upon. Heck, Albert Einstein married his first cousin, and certain royal families actively encouraged inbreeding. But the biggest reason for all of this inbreeding is that throughout most of human history, we lived in small groups with limited baby-making options, which led to a lot of trees that just don't cork very much. But wait, so far we've been defining your ancestors as everyone you're descended from. If instead we think about an ancestor as someone that actually passed genes on you, that number is much, much smaller. I know that sounds paradoxical. I mean, you had to get all of your genes from somewhere, so of course they came from your ancestors, but they didn't come from all of your ancestors. Imagine that instead of passing along your genes, people passed along different kinds of candy. To inherit your genome, you close your eyes and you draw an equal number of candies from your mom's bowl and your dad's bowl, each of which contains a mix of everything they got from their ancestors. There are going to be a lot of candies that you don't get. These represent genes that you don't inherit. This is obviously an oversimplification, but I hope you get the idea. You can see how very quickly you might by chance receive fewer or no genes from some ancestors because you received extra from another. Over time, this process means that most of your distant ancestors didn't pass on any DNA to you. If you do the math, which is complicated, you only have a 50% chance of having inherited any DNA at all from a randomly selected ancestor 10 generations back, and a 3% chance of inheriting anything from an ancestor 15 generations back. The majority of your ancestors farther back than that almost certainly didn't pass along any DNA to you. The DNA you did inherit came from only a very small slice of the pyramid of all of your supposed ancestors. So your family tree might be smaller than you think, and your gene pool is even smaller.
Hey Cameron, it's David. I'm just butting in to let you know that my wife and I are definitely not cousins. Well, at least not super close ones. I just found that out thanks to MyHeritage, which sponsored this video. I typed in the little bit I knew about my relatives, and MyHeritage got to work, finding all sorts of historical documents from their huge library. Like, it found my mom's grandfather Gustav's papers from when he passed through Ellis Island on his way into the US. And also this picture that my dad had never seen before of his grandmother Geta. MyHeritage also finds potential matches, which is how I learned that my great-grandmother Paula regularly used 2 different spellings of her last name. And as I built up my tree, MyHeritage's instant discovery function connected me to an already built tree created by a distant relative that added all sorts of new information about my family. They've also got this amazing photo tool that lets you enhance and colorize your old black and white photos. Here's the result when I enhance and colorize that amazing photo of my great-grandmother. So sign up for a 14-day free trial and enjoy all of the amazing features MyHeritage has to offer. Just scan the QR code here or click the link in the description to get started. Thanks, MyHeritage.
There is a world-renowned marriage counselor named John Gottman, and John Gottman has been studying marriages his entire career. That's all he does, is study marriages. He has a whole
I've watched
team of people
entire
studying.
realities consumed
And
by
he claims
chaos.
that
I
he
won't
can,
let that
he can
happen again.
predict whether or not a couple is going to get divorced with a 91% accuracy rate within the first 10 minutes of meeting them if they show
30
the
seconds before
signs
you attack.
of fruitless
Get ready.
fighting. You want to know what those signs are? It's scientifically proven
So you just
that if
wave
you
those
show all
jacked
these
up hands
signs,
of yours
your
around,
marriage
didn't
is in
it?
trouble. So the first sign is what we call harsh startup. Harsh startup means we need to talk. The harsh
I've got
startup
some signature
is
hand
you
motions.
did it again. The harsh startup is beginning the conversation already abruptly, already negatively,
The battle
and
starts in
already
5,
with a
4,
hostile attitude.
3,
Well, the next
2,
sign is
1.
actually 4 things.
All you
Gottman
need to
calls
do
it
is
the
capture
4
the mission area.
horsemen.
Got it?
It's defensiveness,
Which means it's probably not, right?
contempt, which we've already talked
You're
about,
about to find
criticism,
out.
and stonewall. Those are the 4 horsemen that together make up the next sign of divorce. Now, what is stonewalling? Stonewalling, which is when one person in the couple is just not responding. Stonewalling. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, sure. Maybe looking out the window, you're having conversations, but they're not looking at you, they're not really telling you how you feel, how they feel, like you don't really know what's going on inside them. Here's like that person doesn't even feel. The next sign is very much related to the previous 4. So flooding. Flooding is when you have so many feelings that you can't even speak. So flooding, they can't tell you how they feel. It's not that they don't have feelings. They've got so many that they can't pick one.
Reborn from the chaos.
And flooding is very dangerous because it leads to the next sign. The next sign is physiological distress. If you've been allowing the conflict in your marriage to go on for so long, the anger to not get resolved for so long, you're going to start having physical problems. You're going to start having ulcers, backache, neck aches, you're going to start sleeping more, you're going to start having physiological problems. You're going to start failing from the inside. The last 2 signs of marriages that are in distress bad memory and failed to prepare for tests. What does bad memory mean? What it means is you interpret history negatively. You're only remembering the negative things from the past. It's like, yeah, I remember our wedding. Yeah, he was late.
Their
He was
team's
late to
capture
that. He's
progress
still late
has
today.
passed the halfway
You
point.
forget all the good things and you remember all the bad things. You're reinterpreting history negatively. Bad memory, bad signs, leading to bad things in your relationship. And the last thing is failed repair. This is really critical. Everybody, even good marriages, fighting in a marriage is not the problem. The problem is what are you going to do with it? And the really critical thing is to be able to repair what you did. Fighting isn't a problem. Not being able to repair it is. And repair attempts can be simple. It can be as simple as coming to a common understanding. It can be as simple
Perfection
as
is unattainable.
communicating that we're on the same side. You've got to have the ability to get back on the beam. You've got to have the ability to get back on track. You've got to have the ability to repair. Most marriages never really solve their problem. Yeah, I know, that's sad news. Gottman has discovered this. But you will see in most of your marriage fighting about the same issue over and over and over. You're never going to see child rearing the same way. You're never going to see your in-laws the same way. You're never going to manage money the same way. You're never going to do lots of things the same way. You'll come to a common enough agreement to live with. But for most things that you fight about, you never really come to a common understanding. So why do people fight? You fight because you want to be connected. You feel disconnected and you're fighting to be reconnected. You think you're fighting about money. You think you're fighting about business. You're not. You're fighting because I need to feel connected to you and you don't. And if you feel reconnected to each other, then the subject that you're fighting about doesn't become as important. In psychology, we say the thing is never the thing. And what I mean by that is, you think you're fighting about something, you're not. You're fighting about whether or not we feel connected. And once we do feel connected, the thing all of a sudden doesn't seem so important.
We've seen Tyrael
You'll
appear
need a
multiple
top-notch
times in
team
the
to
different
win this
Diablo
one.
games, but who are the other Archangels? These leaders of the High Heavens are the equivalent to the 7 Lords of the Burning Hells. First off, we
don't
want to
have
talk
to be a
about the
witch
lone
to find a
sister
magic in
of the
this
Angiras Council,
But it
and that
does help.
is Ariel. Ariel is the only female in the Angiras Council, which is the governing body of the High Heavens, and she is the Angel of Hope. Being the most beloved of all the angels in heaven, she leads the high chorus there. Remember, angels are beings made out of harmony and light, so her leading the high chorus means she is the most harmonious of the angels. In her realm in heaven, called the Garden of Hope, you could almost equate it to a nice, quiet park in the middle of a very
30
busy
seconds
city.
before you
Angels
attack.
from
Get
all
ready.
different parts of the Silver City will congregate in the Garden of Hope to relax, clear their minds, and de-stress. It's almost like the Zen Garden of Heaven. In the Angiras Council, Ariel is known to always be able to de-escalate conflicts between her brothers, especially those between Tyrael and Imperius. Those two are like oil and water and are
battle
always
starts
in
in
conflict
5,
with one another.
4,
For her to be able to
3,
calm down those two,
2,
it just goes to show her level of patience and benevolence. Now, that's not to say that Ariel is a passive angel. He very much is aware that she lives in a broken universe and conflict is unavoidable. In battle against the demons of hell, she uses a long cord around her neck, which is made of purifying light and runes that, when she wraps it around her comrades, it clears their mind and heals them of all wounds. And on the demons, she can use it as a weapon to wrap around them and burn them with righteous fire. The one and only time that we see Ariel in the games is in Diablo 3, where her gardens become infested with Diablo's legions and their hell portals. Now, Ariel, being the manifestation of one of Anu's virtues, which is hope, when she is absent, that hope becomes absent within the angels of the high heavens. This is seen when we encounter her in Diablo 3, where through the infestation of Diablo's minions and his Elriths in her Gardens of Hope, Tyrael himself, even though he's in human form, I guess it still affects him, completely is devoid of hope to defeat Diablo Keel's the prime evil attacking heaven. If the high heavens becomes a part of Diablo 4 in the future, I am certain that we will see her again. Next up of the angels is the archangel that is closest to his sister Ariel, and that is Ethereal, the archangel of fate. Now, the angels all believe in fate or destiny. In other words, that all things that are going to happen have already been written, and all events in the future and in history were predestined. Ethereal is known as the only angel in the high heavens that is able to read and interpret the esoteric scrolls of fate. You can directly compare him to the Sisters of Fate in Greek and Roman mythology, but instead of a thread of fate that the sisters read off of, Ethereal gets his predictions from a mystical artifact called Telazar, the Scroll of Fate. Almost like a magic 8-ball, the scroll is 1 page long, but depending on the answers that Ethereal speaks, the predictions will be written out as so. Now, Ethereal's domain in the high heavens is called the Library of Fate, and this library is adorned with a bunch of different shattered crystals. These crystals appear to be fragments of the Crystal Arch, which is believed to be the original Anu's spine. With the crystals being fragments of the all-knowing Anu, it is no surprise then that the crystals will at times conflict with the visions and information provided to Ethereal, who at times does appear indecisive because the predictions he makes aren't always accurate. Now, although Ethereal is completely dedicated to the High Councils, he keeps the predictions he gets from the scrolls and the crystals within his library close to his chest, as his brother Imperius, the Archangel of Valor, who leads Heaven's armies, constantly asks him what the outcome of the eternal conflict between the heavens and hells will be, to which he never answers. The one time we do meet Ethereal in the games is again in Diablo 3, when we go to High Heavens. At the time, Dragunov, one of Diablo's lieutenants, captures Ethereal and holds the Library of Fate hostage, which we then defeat him and free it from. Now, one thing to note about Auriel and Ethereal, these two are very close and they're very intrigued by the Nephilim, or humanity, in Sanctuary. Auriel sees the hope of all things, including the potential of man, and Ethereal, through his scrolls of fate, cannot see any visions or make any predictions on the outcome of their actions, because since humanity and the Nephilim didn't originate at the beginning of the creation of the High Heavens and the Burning Hells, and are something else entirely, his scroll of fate shows him nothing. Now, because of this, back during the Sin War, when Sanctuary was first discovered by the High Heavens, the 5 Archangels made a vote as to what should happen to man, the Nephilim, and Sanctuary. Ethereal and Auriel, due to one, the hope of mankind being good, and Ethereal's curiosity and not be able to predict their actions and destinies, voted for the preservation of humanity. Next, we have an angel that we all know and love, and that is Tyrael, the Archangel of Justice. Tyrael, only second to Imperius in terms of battle prowess, is known to lead his forces to victory again and again against the demonic legions of hell during the eternal conflict. Now, his sword of justice, Elduin, is known to be able to cut anything and any being in existence except those with righteous intent. Tyrael has always been about upholding justice and making sure there's equilibrium and balance in the High Heavens. His domain, called the Courts of Justice, is almost like the Capitol in the US, where angels come to voice their grievances and try to restore equilibrium. Now, it's important to note, Tyrael was actually the first of the Archangels to discover man and Sanctuary, and that was due to detecting the presence of his rebelled lieutenant, Inarius. Now, when Tyrael first discovered humanity, he considered the existence of that plane to be blasphemy. That was until the sacrifice of Odyssean, the awakened Nephilim, who, during the Sin War, completely halted the invasion of the High Heavens and the Burning Hells. As such, Tyrael's eyes were awakened to the level of selflessness that humanity and the Nephilim were capable of. And due to this, he voted alongside Ethereal and Auriel to preserve the realm of man and Sanctuary, being the deciding vote to keep the heavens out of man's world. It is ironic then that the Angel of Justice Tyrael himself ends up becoming a renegade, disregarding the orders and the treaty of the Aegirus Council not to interfere with mankind's affairs, which he has done over and over again, to the point that he forfeited his Archangel position and fell to the realm of man. Now, moving on to the 4th Archangel, and that is Malthael, the Archangel of Wisdom. We got quite acquainted with him in Diablo 3's expansion, the Reaper of Souls, but let's talk a little bit about his origin before we talk about how he turned bad. Malthael, the Angel of Wisdom, was always that really smart introvert in the room who didn't do a lot of talking. His wisdom comes from the fact that he is able to see the threads that connect all things, and in his realm in heaven, called the Pools of Wisdom, there are wells that when peered into, the angel can see all simultaneous emotions of all beings in the universe at that moment. He derives his insight from a vessel called Chaldar, the Chalice of Wisdom, which is believed to be filled from those pools in the Pools of Wisdom. Now, it is said that upon Sanctuary's creation, Malthael's mood seriously fouled. Although he is an intellect and an introvert who doesn't say much, when he does speak in the Aegirus Council, all pause to listen. And although he is slow to anger, he is quite the combatant in the Eternal Conflict, known to be able to deflect enemy attacks with the slightest use of force. Now, it is troubling to hear that when the World Stone was destroyed by Tyrael's doing, Malthael disappeared completely from the high heavens until the end of Diablo 3, where he arose in Sanctuary, not as the Angel of Wisdom, but as the Angel of Death. What bothered him about humanity and the Nephilim is that he saw the half-demonic portion in them and considered them as impure. Also, being the Angel of Wisdom, he knew the machinations of the Burning Hells in that they wanted to use the Nephilim to gain an advantage over the high heavens. Upon attacking Sanctuary and stealing the Black Soul Stone, Malthael, now the Angel of Death, wiped out close to 90% of all of humanity, leaving to the shattered, hopeless world that we experience in Diablo 4. But now, what's interesting though is regardless of him considering humanity and the Nephilim to be impure, when a vote was made by the Archangels, he chose to remain neutral, not voting for their destruction or to be preserved. Last but certainly not least is the leader of the Angiris Council himself, and that is Imperius, the Archangel of Valor. Known to be the combat general of the high heavens, he commands the angelic host into combat against the Burning Hells. In fact, it is said that his prowess in combat is a giant morale boost and motivating for the angelic host in combat against the Burning Hells. It is said that using his spear, Solaris, which he summons from light, he once felled so many demons in a battle against the Burning Hells that rivers of blood flowed through all 7 of their domains. Imperius' sanctum in heaven is called the Halls of Valor, where he strategizes for future battles against the Burning Hells and trains his warriors for battle readiness. Also, his hall is adorned with his myriad of different trophies attained during conflicts against the Burning Hells. When it comes to attacks, he's known to spearhead the attack and the defense of the high heavens, always being the first to meet his opponents in front of the Diamond Gates. Now, during the vote of whether or not Sanctuary should be preserved and left alone, Imperius was the only one of the 5 angels that chose to destroy Sanctuary. As a result of this treaty, both the heavens and the hells caused the eternal conflict. And as such, due to the fact that Imperius' entire identity was commanding the warrior host of angels, he grew to be quite arrogant and almost a tyrant in enforcing legality, which is why he came down so hard on Tyrael for his involvement in protecting Sanctuary. Now, an interesting tidbit about Imperius, there are rumors that say that Imperius was supposed to be the original nemesis in Reaper of Souls and not Malthael. So although the Nephilim helped defeat the primeval in heavens, he blames them and Tyrael for allowing Diablo to invade the heavens in the first place. For it was the Nephilim that helped craft the Soul Stone, trapped all 7 souls of the Lords of Hell, and then awakened Diablo as a primeval in his daughter, Leah. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy videos like these, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting with your thoughts. Thank you.
On my channel recently, I've done a few videos. They mainly are collab videos around a powerful singular entity in fiction that can take out the majority of the rest. So for instance, we did Itachi on my side channel. And on this channel, we did Aizen from Bleach. But those videos are a little bit tongue-in-cheek in the naming, where we say 99.9%, because while it's true, it's not really talking about every known popular heavy hitter of all time. It's just sort of a joke title based on, well, 99.9% of fiction would in fact get beat up by Itachi and Aizen in 1v1. That's just true. Like, who in Game of Thrones is going to take them out? Like, it's realistically. Twilight, are they taking out Itachi or Aizen? Well, think about any of these characters. Homelander, not happening. In those videos, we went over, just for the fun of it, even particularly strong hacks abilities. So Aizen and Itachi, they both have very powerful hypnosis abilities that actually strong even against people that might be more powerful than them. So in this video, though, we'll be talking about Doctor Doom. Now, Dr. Doom, unlike Aizen and Itachi, actually does beat 99.9% of most characters in fiction, even in the most popular heavy hitter sense. So, most characters you can think of, Dr. Doom actually does have a reason for why you might think he would beat them. So with me today, I brought Chuck and Bryce's comics. They both are experts on this topic, so I'll just be kind of asking them some questions I think you guys will find interesting. And with that out of the way, I guess we'll start out with Chuck, and then Bryce's and I will kind of go over a bit of something more interesting in terms of cross-verse discussion of the character. But Chuck, he sort of has more of the conventional take here, where just going off of the main comics alone and something more standard or orthodox, what would realistically happen if you were to throw Dr. Doom in a verse like One Piece, in a verse like Bleach, in a verse like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, anything else? What do you think would realistically happen if you were to throw Dr. Doom in there? And I'm kind of curious how you think you'd actually interact with certain abilities. Like, how do you think you'd interact with something like Tsukuyomi from Itachi? Or how do you think he would deal with, like, Aizen's immortality, Yuha's almighty? Could he touch sort of like a being made of light, like, you know, the light users, I'm kind of actually curious about that. Do you think he has resistance to Toon Force and things like that? So without further ado, let's hear it.
So before I really get into what exactly he would really do in those situations, one thing is clear that Dr. Doom is kind of like a composite character. Now what I mean by that is you can take an archetype or a general, like, you know, strong character in a particular concept, right? And then you combine those by several times. You might even like amplify those abilities by several times. And then you pretty much get every single ability you can think of in fiction. That is Dr. Doom. So what I mean by that is, you take Iron Man's expertise of technology, which has allowed him to fight against gods and cosmic entities.
There are exactly 14 different games of tic-tac-toe.
Pick your
Now,
hero.
some of you may
Or
object to
villain.
this.
I'm not judging.
We configured the most advanced AI models to create a debate between Niccolo.
This is a map of every angelic being mentioned in the Bible. When you think of an angel, you probably see something like this. White fluffy wings, male names, and are described as such. But there's a strange...
Guts from Berserk was born from his...
There is actually a solid amount of RPGs dropping in 2026.
Bastion, one of the most hated heroes in Overwatch, often considered a throw pick by high-tier players, yet destroying worst lobbies and ruining the day of casuals. Specifically, I mean Overwatch 1 Bastion. Yet, was the rework actually a success? Is the Overwatch 2 version any better or less hated than its predecessor? To answer these questions, I'll be covering the entire history of Bastion, from its time of complete dominance to its otherwise frequent uselessness, and of course, the significance of its rework. Bastion was actually one of the first 12 heroes revealed back in 2014, and in its early stages, the hero was quite different from what we know now. Beta Bastion only had 250 HP, a heal which was interrupted by damage and prevented movement, and no damage reduction passive. Yet in return, the Omnic was far more deadly. Namely, Configuration Assault was instead Configuration Sentry, which rooted Bastion in place but granted insane damage. All the way back then though, the hero also got a huge 1000 HP shield to protect it. The trade-off was a limited turn angle, weaker recon form, and a painfully slow form switching animation. However, Sentry easily made up for this, since you could also headshot at the time. Add a cool tank ultimate and you had yourself a particularly dangerous hero. During the beta, Bastion was a menace to say the least. Not only did the shield make it particularly difficult to eliminate, but people also just didn't know what they would do. Everyone was new to the game, and Bastion was arguably the biggest noob stomper of them all. Despite having some very clear weaknesses, the enemy was rarely capable of exploiting them. As a result, Bastion was one of the most dangerous heroes during the beta, and is easily added to the list of good reasons for having a beta. Right from the start, casual players who just wanted to try a new game were getting mowed down, but thankfully a few changes were made leading into the official release. Right before the game's launch in May of 2016, Bastion's shield was removed. In return, the Omnic could actually turn 360 degrees and got an extra 50 health. These changes were absolutely helpful in limiting Bastion's rampage and made the hero a lot more manageable to play against. Still, in Overwatch's early days, people were either relatively or entirely new to the game, and for Bastion, that meant players didn't know how to counter it. Sure, an Omnic turret sat by itself is usually easy to take care of, and already the best players were learning Bastion's many workarounds. However, Reinhardt could still run the shield, and for most people it would take a bit to figure the game out. As such, despite being pretty uncommon, when Bastion was in the lobby, it was probably ruining the enemy's lives. After a few months though, that narrative would flip on its head. Bastion was still an absolute menace in low ranks, but among those who grew more experienced, the opposite became true. Or rather, Bastion became a menace in an entirely different way, a menace to have on your own team. You see, although the Omnic was a huge threat for casual players, its weaknesses were plentiful. The recon form was pretty bad, so in order to do much of anything, Bastion had to be rooted in place, making it easily exploitable. If an entire team composition was built around Bastion, it could work, but otherwise the Omnic was basically a throw pick. And what if a team didn't want to pick heroes that worked with Bastion? Then you were screwed. So, alongside being hated by worse players, Bastion also became hated by those in higher ranks for the opposite reason. But hey, at least the last Bastion soon came to make things a little better. Clearly, something had to change, and a prime way of accomplishing this was perhaps to shift some power out of Sentry and into Recon. As such, a rework arrived on February 28th of 2017, and if you weren't a Bastion player, the days to come may have been the worst of your entire Overwatch career. First off, Bastion's Recon form was buffed, further supported by the changes to self-repair. Even though a resource bar was added, its being usable whilst moving and not interrupted by damage was huge. To compensate, both configurations Tank and Sentry were nerfed, with the latter no longer headshotting but at least transforming faster. Surely though, this version of Bastion can't have been that much better, so how did it become so broken? Well, the final change was the addition of the Ironclad passive. This exists today, granting a 20% damage reduction during Sentry and ult. At the time though, the number was 35%. Combined with armor and an uninterruptible heal, Bastion therefore became almost impossible to kill. Already, you can probably see why this was so problematic, but it gets worse, because back then, damage reduction stacked up to 70%, so if Bastion received a nano boost, it could tank almost every ult in the game. Actually, before the patch went live, there was no clear limits, but thankfully Blizzard added a cap before Bastion could wreak havoc. It wreaked havoc anyways. Now, obviously Bastion still had some clear weaknesses, but the passive made most of them far less exploitable. And with how powerful the Omnic was, teams could accept the need to protect it, making Bastion even harder to take down. Thankfully, Ironclad was nerfed a mere 3 days later, ensuring that Bastion's rampage was cut short. Or was it? Because on console, the nerf took an entire devastating 3 weeks to roll out. Despite already being hated before, this situation made things even worse. For the top PC players, I suppose it wasn't that bad. The meta just got shaken up for a few days. However, the majority of both casual and just total players were on console, and they were not happy to say the least. Already before, they were the ones who were oppressed by Bastion, and Ironclad simply took this to another level, both due to its power and due to how common it made Bastion during March. The nerf did come eventually, but it felt incredibly late. Anyways, following this, the Omnic was back to pretty bad overall. It was arguably slightly better than launch Bastion, but still nowhere near relevant at higher ranks. I couldn't find any exact data from before the changes, but for most of 2017, Bastion was the least picked of all heroes in Grandmaster. Honestly, Bastion's bad position among better players wouldn't change for a long time, yet that doesn't mean the Omnic never had its use. In the Overwatch World Cup towards the end of 2017, it did see some play in what became known as the Pirate Ship comp. This setup involves placing Bastion on top of a moving payload, then having either Reinhardt or Ritter's shield in front, or ideally both. Most famously, this comp was used by Team France to full-put Junkertown against China in overtime, utilizing Mercy and Zenyatta to further amplify Bastion's damage. Although the strategy was incredibly niche, often only used by pros to exploit Junkertown's open sightlines, it was devastating the few times it worked. And of course, this came to inspire some use from casual players, who thereby ruined the day of their enemies. Unfortunately, Bastion's irregular use and highly situational power continued on into 2018, with a mere 1% pick rate during the Overwatch League's first season. Bastion did receive buffs in both July and December, which perhaps made things a little worse for low-ranked players. At the same time though, people were on average getting better at dealing with enemy Bastions, and the buffs changed nothing for those in higher ranks. Eventually, GOATs, aka Triple Tank Triple Supports, took over, and Bastion remained the least played hero in the game. The beginning of 2019 was no different, and although there were a few uses on, for example, Hanamura or Paris Point A defense, Bastion was pretty bad overall. It did take some time, but eventually Bastion found another way to become near unkillable. Due to the dominance of GOATs, Rollock was introduced in August of 2019, and alongside it, Sigma was released. Then in September, Bastion got a slight buff to self-repair, and now it was able to join the new double shield meta. Together, Sigma and Orisa's shields provided an insane amount of protection, allowing Bastion to sit and shoot all day long. The Omnic wasn't the #1 pick, as both Reaper and Doomfist were usually chosen to ignore the shields. However, if you wanted any chance at breaking them, Bastion was your go-to option. This became particularly powerful thanks to Baptiste, who was released earlier in the year. With a combination of 2 shields, AoE healing, immortality field, ironclad armor, and self-healing, removing Bastion was incredibly difficult if a team set up and bunkered down. This variation was still somewhat situational, but it was devastatingly potent more often than previous Bastion comps. Needless to say, this setup as a whole was pretty hated at the time. As Double Shield developed and the shields got nerfed, Bastion's stocks did fall however. With weaker barriers, Bastion's raw damage output was less necessary, and it also had less cover to keep it safe. Subsequently, the Omnic's pick rates returned to absolutely dead last by the end of the year, and 2020 didn't do much to change this. A buff was granted in May, but fearful of Bastion's potential and ability to destroy casuals, Blizzard opted to play it safe. As a result, Bastion was by far the least used hero in the Overwatch League's first season, and ranked was largely the same. 2021 granted somewhat of a sideways change, but regardless, the Omnic was completely out of favor. Blizzard realized that something major had to be done to fix the hero, because it saw almost no play for the rest of Overwatch 1, which you could argue was a good thing. So that was Bastion in Overwatch 1, an absolute menace for the majority of the player base that didn't know how to deal with it, yet at the same time only rarely useful within higher ranks due to its enormous weaknesses. Perhaps not the most hated hero, but definitely among them, and so going into the sequel, a rework was the best option. But how successful would the rework actually end up being? Could Bastion finally become accepted, or would it continue to be the low-ranked menace it had always been? Well, kind of to both, but I know that isn't an acceptable answer, so let's dive a little. In my opinion, the rework changes were at least very interesting. Self-repair was replaced by tactical grenade, ironclad was removed, Recon's weapon was adjusted, sentry became configuration assault, and finally the ultimate was changed from tank to artillery. For the most part, I personally quite liked these changes, but they weren't all good, and their initial reception was definitely mixed. Some people were excited over Bastion potentially becoming more viable and less frustrating, yet others were devastated over its losing self-repair. The change from sentry to assault would be a big adjustment for many, and the ults, well, that is one part I definitely did not like about this rework. Anyways though, let's start by looking at how Bastion's power level was affected, and to be honest, it did not start out well. The Omnic's pick rate in the 2022 Overwatch League was as low as ever, and its win rate in the beta was relatively bad. As such, a cooldown reduction was granted for the grenade, and Ironclad was re-added in time for the sequel's official release. Even then though, Bastion wasn't great. The Omnic was a little more versatile and thereby less often a complete throw pit. However, thanks to its huge hitbox, reduced movement speed during assault, and long cooldown period where it was almost useless, Bastion still had some clear weaknesses. Sure, you weren't completely stationary, but it was still difficult to get value at the highest level, and at the lowest level it was also probably harder than before, although that might be a good thing. not wanting Bastion to be permanently irrelevant, Blizzard buffed it at the beginning of Season 2. Now, the ultimate, although still boring, was at least okay at getting kills, and the shorter cooldown on the reconfigure was very helpful. At first, people were reluctant to give Bastion a chance, but eventually many realized its true power. That still doesn't mean the Omnic was great, but at least a solid pick for most reps. At the very top, those weaknesses I previously mentioned remain a little too exploitable, but at least Bastion was viable in a few niche situations, so it seems that very little change in that regard since Overwatch 1. Despite being generally okay though, Bastion eventually received further changes in August of 2023, and these were some pretty significant buffs. Once again, players were at first unsure if Bastion had actually become viable, but it didn't take long until the Omnic's pick for its soul. Not only was the tactical grenade now highly deadly, but the armor repair from configuration assaults added some insane survivability. This combined with the previous buffs, and Bastion had genuinely become one of the best heroes in the game. It was the second most played DPS in most ranks, including TF, which is ridiculous considering that it previously had never even come close. I admittedly couldn't find stats regarding the broken Ironclad period, but when Bastion was sold during Double Shield, it was only 8 among a smaller pool of DPS. So second for pick rate could very well mean it was actually the best DPS in the game. That is only further supported by the Overwatch League, in which Bastion was almost a must pick. Obviously, nerfs were inevitable, and 3 separate changes came in relatively quick succession. However, they weren't fast enough to prevent community outrage against the Omnic. For the most part, Bastion wasn't quite as annoying as in Overwatch 1, and didn't stomp on casuals quite as hard. That doesn't mean the hero wasn't problematic though, as several parallels could still be drawn between the two versions. In particular, the new Bastion was frustrating for tank players. As both a solo role and a clearest target, tanks have had to deal with a myriad of counter swaps ever since the secret launch, and unfortunately Bastion became one of the prime culprits. If you lost one fight against Reinhardt, swap to Bastion. If you got dove once by Winston, swap to Bastion. If you just generally hated the enemy tank, swap to Bastion. Thankfully, configuration assaults had a short duration followed by a cooldown, so you could actually play around it. Yet that didn't prevent it from shredding you every slight misplay, or your teammates from walking right to their deaths. Again, reworked Bastion wasn't quite as frustrating overall, but it was still a problem. Moving on, and after the third nerf, the Omnic returned to being subpar. It had its time in the sun, yet that couldn't last. Some people in the metal ranks still believed, and Bastion wasn't awful, but by the end of 2023, its dominance was clearly over. At the beginning of 2024 though, Season 9 brought changes to health pools, projectile sizes, and the DPS passive. Initially, this seemed pretty good for Bastion. Added survivability is always appreciated, and the passive's healing reduction was useful. However, in reality, things weren't as bright as they seemed. None of Bastion's abilities received changes to compensate for the slower time to kill, and the Omnic's ultimate was one of the worst in the game. Furthermore, the final cooldown nerf back in October hurt significantly, and so Bastion was now barely even situationally strong. A buff was granted in September of 2024, but Bastion remained below average for the entire year. With the beginning of 2025, perks were added to Overwatch, and Bastions were actually really interesting. The choice between better mobility or survivability for the miner was nice to have, and either option could be a difference maker in the right situation. Then came the return of self-repair or configuration tank for the mage. Each of these were also intriguing options to have, and unlike some perks, actually offered uniquely distinct playstyles. That doesn't mean they made Bastion incredible. At first there were some clips of self-repair seeming broken due to it not having a resource bar, something which was changed in March, but that didn't make it overpowered. Basically, the perks added some fun and cool utility, but didn't actually make Bastion that much better relative to other heroes. In June, the Omnic's hitbox size was finally reduced, thereby limiting an issue which had plagued the hero ever since release. July then also granted a slight buff, and now, although still usually below average, Bastion could have a few bright moments in professional play. Today, I'd argue Bastion is in a pretty healthy spot, all things considered. Its pick rate is actually decent, which the Overwatch 1 version could only have dreamed of. At the same time, it isn't that impressive, and its win rate is low without being too bad. Perhaps some slight additional buffs may be warranted, but otherwise, I think Bastion is fine. It can still be annoying for new or casual players, yet less so than the original, and is also less of a pro pick in higher ranks. But what do you think about Bastion? Was the rework a success, or should Blizzard rethink once again? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.
I lift up my comrades.
Plasma?
Body in the bed.
Feel the wrath of the goddess! I am ready to put on a show!
I lift up my comrades. Combat capabilities enhanced. Energy is good. No. I like confidence. He's not who you think he is. Yes, he is. Seems innocent, naive.
My only job is to sort out what happened to that human in that bathtub. Ever since I met you, my life has spun out of control.
It's like they were obsessed with each other. I'm not sure which one of them is more demented.
He's telling a very morbid story here. Seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Not if I get you first.
Hey, I like
I'm not a hero. I'm the Punisher.
I have been a street and region of the solar system.
Some people are just meant to be together.
Waffles with maple syrup and whipped cream on top.
Oi! Where's that son of a witch, Thor Odin's son?
All you need to do is capture the mission area.
Is that butt ugly popsicle stick talking to me?
Bring it on.
I can't believe you came.
My brother from another mother, man. I mean that. I mean it.
Ah, brothers forever.
Brothers forever.
Hey, Whitesnake.
The name is Thor, with a T, and an R, and an O, and an H, not in that order.
Listen, bud. Clean up this mess and leave this planet.
What? No, I like it here. Everyone likes me. We're having a great time.
Party's over, pal.
How about you just buzz off?
I wasn't asking, hotshot.
Judge, jury, executioner! Party pooper. There, I said it.
Okay. Now for the rest of you.
How about you?
Smooth move, bro. You just...
Hamarang, get it?
Here we go. Here we go.
Look, pal. I'm gonna count to 3, and you're gonna put the hammer down. Knock it off!
You see, this is why I protect my
No! Stop!
Oh, but I just...
No! I said no!
Feel the wrath of the goddess!
Oh no, your weird rocks all falling over. There it is. Woo, let's do this.
Plasma?
A party pooper! You know, I've got a crown too. We both like fire, right? Come on, let's see what Charlie here on this thing. How low can I go? Everyone, watch me slide down that pointy thing! And away! Not cool. I actually felt that one. Why do you insist on crushing my mellow? Oh, loosen up. Have fun smiling.
I gave you a warning. Hell, I gave you a warning punch.
Crown Prince of Asgard, only son of Odin, what are you doing?
Mother!
Mother?
What are you doing here? You must be using a lot of dark magic just to check in on me.
I had a visitor. She said you were on Midgard.
Well, she is mistaken. I'm obviously in my room studying.
Do not tell falsehoods to your mother.
Oh, you mean, me and my study group came down here for a cultural exchange.
I'm cutting my trip short.
You're coming here?
My stateside. I expect to see a full syllabus when I arrive.
Pulse charge, fire!
Let's keep fighting until we have winner. A little help, please. I am ready to put on a show. I need assistance.
Have you ever felt like you're not that smart? Everyone around you just gets it faster than you do? What if I told you you might actually have a higher IQ than you think, but your brain just hides it in plain sight? Stick with me until the end, because these 10 subtle signs reveal whether your intelligence is operating on a level most people never recognize. And number 10, it's the one most geniuses share. Let's get into it. 1. You talk to yourself. Sounds weird, right? Studies from the University of Wisconsin found that people who verbalize their thoughts process information faster.
I love JRPGs, and if you've been around my channel for a while now, you'll know that these are the games that I connect with the most.
Why can't you ever accelerate any object to the speed of light? I mean, we can go very close, but
You'll
we can
need a
never ever
top-notch
reach the
team
speed
to
of light.
win this one.
Why is that? The most common explanation I got is if you take the graph of the kinetic energy versus the speed, look, as the speed approaches c, kinetic energy goes to infinity, so it takes infinite energy. But my problem is that that's not an explanation. I don't have an intuition behind why that is true. Another explanation was mass goes to infinity, but again, there's no evidence for that. So what's really going on? What's the physically happening that's limiting that ship from going towards the speed of light? That's what we want to try and answer in this video. And so if you're ready for it, let's begin. So Einstein, where do we start? Einstein says, imagine you are inside a very fast moving ship and you have a photon clock with you. Now at this point I say, wait a second. I don't want to deal with hypothetical clocks. I want to talk about real clocks. Einstein says, well buddy, patience. If you understand photon clocks, you'll be able to understand everything else. I'm like, okay, cool, let's trust him. So what's a photon clock? It's a clock where you have two mirrors and photon bounces between the two. And we can say that, hey, when the photon hits the bottom mirror, it hits a tick. So we get tick, 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 and so on and so forth. Now Einstein asks, what would the same clock look like if you had seen the whole thing from outside the ship? Well, let's see. At first, I'm like, hey, it looks the same to me. The photon is bouncing between the two mirrors. But Einstein says, if you look carefully, you see the photon is now traveling a diagonal path. This means it's going to travel a longer distance. But remember, the photon always travels at the speed of light. C, the speed of light is the same in all references. Which means the photon now is going to take a longer time between the ticks. In other words, we will see that photon clock tick slower. So again, let's compare. Here's what the photon clock would look like from inside the ship. Look at the ticks. Tick, 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 tick. Now from outside. Tick, tick, tick. You can see it has become slower. And now what happens if the ship moves even faster? Well, it will travel even longer path, as you will see, and therefore the tick will become even slower. So the photon clock shows that clocks slow down when they are moving. Now at this point I say, cool, photon clocks tick slower, that's great, but what about real physical clocks, Einstein? Well, Einstein says, if you look at this clock, and if you zoom in to the second hand, what would the animation look like from the atomic scale? And I say, well, if the second hand is just ticking like this, then the animation would look something like this. But Einstein says, that can't happen. You can't have something like this. And the reason is, when, say, this atom accelerates, this atom particular accelerates, all the other atoms cannot accelerate at the same time. Information takes time to travel. These atoms are bonded electromagnetically, so when one atom accelerates, we need to wait for an electromagnetic wave to go from one atom to another, and only then the other atom will accelerate. An electromagnetic wave is basically a photon. So the better way to think about this is, when this atom accelerates, it actually sends a photon, and only then the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and so on, and so forth. So you see, the whole thing is not instantly going, but it's so fast it feels like it's instantly going. But now Einstein asks, Mahesh, what if now, when this set of atoms were moving, what would the animation look like now? Wait a second, this also is very similar to the photon clock. Which means if this was moving, the photons will end up taking a diagonal path again, and therefore the whole thing slows down. Oh, let's look at it. Let's look at it. Here we go. Yes, the photons are slowing down. The photon is not slowing down. The transfer is slowing down because the photons are taking a diagonal path just like before, and therefore real physical clocks actually slow down. Look at this. This one is ticking slower than this one. Real physical clocks slow down when they're moving. Whoa. But at this point we can ask Einstein, is there evidence for this? It's just a theory, right? So Einstein says, well, probably not in history, but today we do. You see, we actually taken atomic clocks which are synced on Earth, and then we put them on planes, and then we flew around the world, and then we brought them back, they went out of sync. And we did this multiple times, and every time we checked, we saw that the amount they went out of sync is perfectly predicted by special relativity. Now, of course, gravity also affects it, which is dealt in general relativity. So there is this additional effect that's happening. But when you put all that together, there is evidence that suggests that time dilation is real. So with this, we know that time itself is slowing down. Or is it? You see, clocks are slowing down, but how does it tell us that the time itself is slowing down, Einstein? Well, Einstein says for that, let's look at radioactivity. Radioactivity is where you have an unstable atom that spontaneously splits. The cool thing about radioactivity is that they have something called the half-life. For example, if you take a radioactive particular radium isotope, it has a half-life of about 1600 years, which means that if you take a billion radioactive radium isotopes, wait for 1600 years, half of them would have decayed and the rest half would have stayed. Wait for another 1600 years, another half would have decayed, and so on and so forth. Now it turns out that if you take elementary particles like muons, they have a half-life of about 1.5 microseconds. We did that we referred to this nucleus. But we also get muons in our atmosphere due to the cosmic rays colliding with our atmosphere. Turns out that these muons, if you look at them, they have a half-life of 10 times more. At first I'm like, Einstein, why is that a problem? Like, these are maybe different muons. And Einstein says no. Just like how the charge of the electron stays the same, regardless of where the electron comes from, or when you do the experiment, or where you do it, the half-life of radioactive sample of a particular radioactive isotope would be the same regardless of where that isotope comes from. So how is it possible that these muons would have 10 times more half-life? Well, turns out that's because they're traveling close to the speed of light. And so if you again plug in the numbers according to special relativity, you get the exact same result. Time dilation. Time dilation is literally making these muons move slower. But what's physically going on? Something very similar to what we saw in the photon clock. The fact that these muons are moving, this means that photons are taking a longer, or whatever that force carrier is. Photons are not the force carrier, this is a weak nuclear force. But whatever the force carriers are, they will now take a longer time, and therefore the radioactive process gets slowed down. And that's why muons are literally aging slower because they're moving. And if muons can age slower, if radioactivity process can slow down, all biochemical processes can also slow down. And that means living beings will age slower. So if you have two twins, one moving, then you will see the moving twin will age much slower than the twin that's at Earth. This is a real process. The fact that you won't see slower is evidence that this is a real healing power. Whoa. We could still argue that Einstein, the processes are slowing down because the force take a longer time because of the motion. But that doesn't mean that the time itself slows down, right? And at this point, Einstein says, well, Mahesh, in science, you need some process to measure anything, right? And so if you believe that time exists beyond the processes and measurements, then it's now beyond the realm of science, and now we're going into philosophical debate. And that's meaningless for science. So science deals with the measurables. And so as far as we can measure, everything that is affected by time is being slowed down, and so we say time itself slows down. Okay. Einstein, now how does this whole time dilation thing explain why objects can never be accelerated to the speed of light? Einstein says, for that, let's first derive the expression for this time dilation. And at first I'm like, no, I want an intuitive explanation.
The X-Men films were entertaining. We got a lot of great things out of them, like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine, and one of my favorite films, X-Men Days of Future Past, but they also did a lot of things not so good. I personally think they botched a lot of the characters, and I plan to make a video on each of them, but today I wanted to put my...
You need a top-notch team to win this one.
Welcome in, and I'll get straight into it. This is how to
I will
fix
bring peace
Marvel
to this
Rivals
universe,
Reign.
no matter the
Now, I
cost.
will state this: the toxicity, that can never be fully fixed. Not really. So I will not go deep into that. Maybe in another video, but not today.
We must secure this location.
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
We escaped the Collector together, little one. We shall face this new threat side by side as well. If only all yokai were so agreeable.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
You were expecting Danny Rand. More eager idiots. This time I need healing. The cosmos heals you. Your cosmic might returns. Healed at last. Just with a stretch. With quantum magic. Your time is past. Healing power. Too good at this.
Many thanks.
You are safe now, my friend.
Come, my minion.
The cosmos heals you.
Our adversaries have
Healing power. I'll take that fancy sword.
Help get that vehicle to its destination.
better already.
Triple KO!
Here at last. We will guide you to safety, Zero. You have my word.
Almost there! Don't turn back now!
What are you aiming at? My soul shall not be yours to claim. Who is great? I require some aid.
Behold the god of thunder!
Does that mean Ragnarok is coming? Just what I required.
Get that vehicle moving again!
Just a little further, Spicy.
Fear not, Spider Zero. We will protect you.
I require some aid. Cosmos heals you.
I am Asgard's might!
The dragon unleashed! Darn amplifiers down. Try something else, Brian. I feel better already. I have located one of our opponents. The cosmos heals you. I require some aid.
Get that vehicle moving again!
I feel better already. The cosmos heals you. Dr.
Born again! By the eye of Agamotto!
Only 60 seconds left! Get that vehicle moving again!
The cosmos heals you. Healed at last.
Farewell.
Destiny awaits.
Down to 30 seconds!
When science failed me, magic was there.
Here's how you shoot!
This is real firepower!
A shortcut through
Get that vehicle moving
Judge! Jury! Executioner!
We have a winner!
Hell unleashed!
Well, you can't expect to win them all. Pick your hero. Or villain. I'm not judging.
Be wary. No timeline exists where Magneto yields.
Lewis Moore, FBI Director Cash Patel. Director.
Charles dreamed of a safe haven for all mutants. At last, I have made it a
30
reality.
seconds before you attack. Get ready.
What's the matter, home? You not liking how Gambit shuffled the deck?
Honestly, I was just expecting card tricks from Doctor Strange. Not you.
This ain't no trick. It's a deadly game. If you won, I can feel you.
Nah, it's cool.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
Gotta make the Thieves Guild proud. And that no easy trick.
Fear bestseller.
Real hard.
I like the cold. Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
Rise from the ashes soon, Genie. We need
You are under my protection.
Capture the mission area!
I feel like myself again. Ah, here they are now. Insignificant attacks. You need not fear.
I could be reckless now. Control seized! I like the cold.
You get away with it.
We are undefeatable!
You shall not be harmed.
I suck!
You need not fear. past was mired in loss and grief, but the future belongs to mutant kind.
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
A symbiote. I hate the...
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
Don't bother trying to make people care. Show them what matters to you.
Sure, those are bad.
I have suffered severe damage.
You shall not be harmed.
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now. Capture the mission area! Turn it right up! Come here, and let me help.
I'm opening a portal. Pentagram of Harala. I can't move.
Your team's halfway point.
That fucking hurt!
The doctor is in.
For so long, I fought for mutant kind's future. Our time has finally arrived.
Blow up. They've almost got it!
I'll patch you up.
I feel like myself again. It seems we have company.
You get a web, and you get a web, and you get a web!
Admit it, you need me. Let's keep
This
fighting.
is real firepower!
Space Raven's amplifier is disabled.
Hey, Chad! Someone clip this! What kind of person is next?
You are under my protection. I feel like myself again.
You're welcome.
I found one of our critics.
Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man!
I'll patch you up.
You need not fear. It seems we are... Fear Magneto!
Control lost. Let's keep fighting until we have a winner.
Rebirth is a mutant's greatest gift. Alas, we can no longer hide from the dangers that lie beyond our shores.
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Be wary.
I'm not anyone's sidekick.
I may be powered by chaos, but I'm trying to bring a bit of order to the universe.
I couldn't even trust you to write an accurate news story, Eddie. What's changed?
We haven't break our rules. You should be proud of us.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
Could have been anyone, but it bit me. Pretty amazing luck.
Like a lamb.
Ah, that's better.
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
Rebo, goodbye for now.
The mission area is yours.
Success is ours.
We hunger.
That's the problem. You would otherwise
Got behind you.
Rebo,
You've captured more than half of the mission area. Keep going. A nice deep freeze.
a disappearing.
Glory is almost yours.
You get a web, and you get a web, and you get a web.
How was that for a trick, Loki?
Lucky draw.
Now, a disappearing.
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a winner.
I'm opening a portal. Pentagram of Parala.
I suck.